In a quiet grocery store of a small town, a wealthy man found himself unable to pay for a simple loaf of bread. Snickers echoed through the aisles, turning into harsh insults and cruel laughter, until a poor black child stepped forward, clutching a crumpled bag of coins. She offered to pay for the bread on behalf of the wealthy man. What the man did not expect was that this extraordinary little girl was about to reveal a secret that would change him forever. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. Denied. The word pulsed red on the checkout screen, stark as a warning flare. Ethan Thorne felt the blood recede from his face, leaving a cold mask. Seriously? A gruff voice grumbled from behind him. Fancy suit designer loafers probably got a yacht but can't buy a loaf of bread. A snort of laughter rippled through the small grocery store line. Must be one of those tech gurus cosplaying as common folk for clicks. Another chuckle, sharp and knowing. The air thickened with assumptions, a judgment that pricked without seeking understanding. Ethan stood, frozen, eyes glued to the unyielding screen. I said, a small voice piped up clearer this time. You can take my money, sir. A collective gasp, then murmurs. Oh, bless her heart, someone whispered. Another pity party for Mr. Millionaire. Ethan finally turned. A little girl no taller than his waist stood there. Her braids were adorned with colorful beads, and her sneakers, though worn, seemed to glow with a child's boundless energy. In her outstretched hand, a crumpled sandwich bag overflowed with coins and a few crinkled dollar bills. It was a king's ransom in her small world. I can't possibly. He managed his voice, a raw whisper, more unnerved by the crowd's gaze than the moment itself. That's for you, sweetie. But you need it more right now, she insisted, her gaze unwavering. My mama always says when someone's standing by themselves, you stand with them. A hush fell, but it was fleeting. That kid's got more grace than he does cash. An older woman scoffed. Ethan offered a strained smile, his vision blurring slightly. The cashier, a young man with a faded band tattoo on his wrist, cleared his throat, clearly unsure of the protocol. Should I cancel the transaction, sir? Ethan let out a slow breath, his shoulders slumping. His pride screamed at him to walk away, to mumble an excuse, maybe even flash his platinum card and reclaim his former stature. But the child's simple gesture held him an unexpected anchor in a sea of public scorn. What's your name, little one? He asked, his voice softer than he intended. Maya, she chirped, a radiant, utterly fearless grin. Well, Maya, Ethan replied, bending slightly at the knees. That is the kindest thing anyone has done for me in longer than I can remember. From a few aisles over, a teenager snickered. Bet this guy has 5 private jets and 0 working credit chips. Maya spun around, her brow furrowed. It's not brave to laugh when people are having a hard time. My mama says that. The chuckles quickly faded. Maya, honey, where did you wander off to? A woman in worn scrubs hurried towards them, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. I hope she hasn't caused any trouble, sir. No trouble at all, Ethan assured her. In fact, she just rescued me from a mountain of embarrassment. The woman studied him a long, curious glance, then looked down at her daughter. What did you do, sweetie? I gave him my emergency coin pouch, Maya stated matter-of-factly. His smart card wasn't working and no one else was helping, so I did. Ah, her mother blinked, then her gaze returned to Ethan. Well, that sounds like my Maya. She gave a slow, thoughtful nod. You all right, sir? I am now. They started to leave, but Ethan found himself stepping forward. Wait. They paused. Would it be all right if I properly thanked both of you, perhaps a bite to eat? The mother looked hesitant, but not entirely closed off. We don't usually... No pressure, Ethan quickly interjected. I haven't been shown such genuine kindness in a long time, not without someone expecting something in return. A long silence stretched between them. Then the woman said, There's a place down the street, Rosie's Diner. Good home cooking, very reasonable. Ethan nodded. I'll meet you there. As they walked away, the weight of the moment settled on his shoulders. Not just the sting of public humiliation, but a peculiar clarity. The silence in the grocery store felt different now. Less mocking, more bewildered. Ethan glanced once more at the denied message. But something else had been accepted today. Something that transcended digital ledgers or bank balances. Outside, the midday sun blazed over the dusty parking lot. Ethan blinked up at the azure sky, then climbed into his weathered pickup. He didn't drive off immediately. He sat there thinking of Maya, of the laughing faces, and of a voice, young, resolute, and unwavering, cutting through the din. "You can take my money, sir." And in those simple words, he heard a deeper truth. You still matter even when the world forgets your name. The comforting aroma of fried catfish and collard greens welcomed Ethan Thorne as he stepped through the screen door of a second-story apartment on Mulberry Lane. The wooden stairs creaked under his weight, the hallway paint peeling in worn patches revealing the building's age. Yet there was an undeniable warmth to the space. Maya had bounded up the steps ahead of him, her beaded braids bouncing as she waved him on. "Come on, it's not fancy, but it's home." Her mother Lena walked behind him, a hand resting on her purse strap, visibly cautious, yet open. "You sure you're okay with this, Mr. Ethan?" "Just Ethan." He offered a small smile. "And yes, I truly appreciate the invitation." Lena gave a slow nod. "Well, just for a bit. I've got my shift at the clinic tonight." The apartment was cozy and tidy. A faded floral sofa, mismatched throw pillows, a round dining table with only 3 chairs. On the wall, a hand-drawn calendar, Maya's school activities, and Lena's night shifts scribbled in vibrant crayon. Ethan felt himself transported back decades to cramped family apartments, warm kitchen smells, and mothers diligently making ends meet. It had been years since he'd been in a home that felt this real. "Sit," Maya commanded, pointing to the couch. "Do you like orange soda? That's all we have." Ethan chuckled. "Love it." She darted into the kitchen. Lena watched her daughter go, then turned back to Ethan. "You're not from around here, are you?" "No, ma'am. Grew up a few towns over. It's been a while since I was back." "Just visiting." He hesitated. "Something like that." Lena studied him for a moment, then moved towards the kitchen. "Maya's a lot like her dad was. Always wanted to help everyone, even when we didn't have much ourselves." "Is he gone?" 5 years now. An accident on his way home from the urgent care clinic. He was a paramedic. She pulled 2 glasses from the cupboard, paused, then added, "I'm used to doing things on my own now." Ethan nodded, not just out of politeness, but with a profound understanding. More than she could know. Maya returned arms, barely managing the 2 glasses. "Ta-da!" She beamed, setting one on the coffee table in front of Ethan. He took a sip. The orange soda was a little flat, but he smiled as if it were a gourmet beverage. "Best I've had all day." Maya sat beside him, eyes wide with innocent curiosity. "You really don't have any money." Ethan laughed, nearly sputtering. "Oh, I have money. I just didn't have the right card today." She nodded seriously as if this made perfect sense. "Happens to Mama sometimes too. The bank gets mixed up." Lena returned from the kitchen, drying her hands. "Maya, go get your homework. You have your spelling words tonight." "Do I have to?" Lena raised an eyebrow. That was enough. With a groan, Maya trudged off to her room, muttering something about words that sound nothing like they're spelled. Ethan watched her go, then turned back to Lena. "You've raised a wonderful child." "Thank you. She's a handful sometimes, but her heart is pure. I just worry the world won't always be gentle with it." Ethan leaned back, considering her words. "Yeah, the world tends to show its teeth when it sees someone truly kind." Lena eyed him again, more openly this time. "So what's your story, Ethan? You don't look like a man who loses sleep over a declined card. Those handcrafted boots that polished watch your voice, like you've delivered keynote addresses." He smiled faintly. "Used to work in venture capital, built a few startups, sold a few more, then got tired of seeing my name plastered everywhere. So I vanished for a while, trying to remember who I was before all the noise." "Are you running from something?" she asked without judgment. "Not running," he said, his voice quieter, just trying to breathe without being a public persona. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Then Lena said, "Well, you found the right town for that. Willowdale doesn't care who you used to be. It cares who you are when someone needs help moving a heavy chest or patching a leaky roof." Ethan chuckled. "Sounds like a fair exchange." Lena checked her watch. "I've got to leave soon. Night shift at St. Benedict's. Can I offer you a ride?" "You don't have to. I want to." She looked like she wanted to argue, but then softened. "All right, thank you." They stood. As Lena grabbed her coat, Maya emerged from her room, holding a sheet of paper. "Mama, can Ethan help me with spelling?" Lena looked at Ethan, amused. He knelt down. "I'll give it a shot." Maya grinned. "Spells serendipity." Ethan blinked. "Are you sure this is 3rd grade?" She giggled. "I like big words." "All right," he said. "Serendipity." She looked at the paper, then at him. "Wow, you're really good." Lena laughed from the doorway. "You two play nice. I'll be back by morning." As Ethan watched her leave, he felt something subtle shift within him. Not a dramatic revelation, no swelling orchestral music, just a delicate crack in the concrete wall he'd meticulously constructed around himself. He turned back to Maya, who was now setting up her homework at the table. "Do you want to stay for dinner tomorrow?" she asked without looking up. "We're having chili with cornbread." Ethan hesitated, the familiar reflex to retreat rising, but he swallowed it down. "I'd like that." And he genuinely meant it. By sunrise the next morning, the video had spread faster than any news bulletin. Ethan Thorne, former venture capital titan and media-dubbed shadow billionaire, was now the unwitting star of the internet's latest comedy trend. The rich guy who couldn't buy his groceries. He hadn't even known the clip existed until he'd opened his phone over a cold breakfast sandwich and black coffee at the Creamery Cafe across from the auto garage. The barista, a young woman with a piercing, had raised a brow when she saw him seated alone in the corner booth, whispering something to the cook behind the counter. Then came the lingering glances from two teenage boys scrolling on their phones a few tables down. "Yo, isn't that him?" one of them said, not even attempting discretion. Ethan didn't flinch. He already knew what they were seeing. A grainy video likely filmed by some bored customer at Willowdale Grocers. His frozen expression, the denied message flashing his bewildered look around, and then the utterly humiliating moment when a small girl handed him a bag of money as if he were a stray dog needing sustenance. The caption read, "When your fortune fails at the register, #billionaire blunders." Another version had edited the footage into a loop of digital currency raining down set to circus music. He'd been famous before, not admired, not even particularly liked, but visible. But this was ridicule in its purest form, stripped of his last vestige of anonymity, mocked for daring to walk into a store as a man, not a brand. Ethan closed the browser, paid his check in cash, and left a generous tip. As he stepped outside, the Willowdale sun was already beating down thick and humid. He shoved his hands into his pockets, feeling a bitter wave of shame begin to crawl up again, until he heard a small voice call out, "Hey Ethan, Maya." She stood across the street, a sky-blue backpack slung over her shoulder, waving as she trotted towards him, an oversized storybook swinging in her arm. Lena followed at a slower pace, her expression unreadable. "You left your sunglasses yesterday," Maya said, holding them out. Ethan took them gently. "Thanks, Maya. You saved my vision." "I saw your face on Mama's phone this morning," she added brightly. "You're super famous now." Lena winced slightly but said nothing. Ethan knelt beside her. "Sometimes being famous just means more people laugh when you trip." Maya wrinkled her nose. "That's silly. You didn't trip. You just had a money hiccup." Ethan chuckled. "You make it sound less dramatic." "It wasn't dramatic. It was just real." There it was again, that strange grounded honesty in her, as if she hadn't yet been taught to be embarrassed by truth. Or perhaps she had, and simply chosen not to care. "People are going to keep talking," Lena finally said. "Even in a quiet town like this, folks don't forget when something goes viral." "I figured," Ethan replied. "This isn't the first time I've been the punchline." "But now, you're the punchline in their backyard," Lena added. "It's different when they think they own your story." They began walking down the street towards Maya's school, passing the corner hardware store, where an old man paused, filling his watering can, to give Ethan a long, amused stare. "Hey, card working today, big shot?" he called out with a grin. Ethan gave a polite nod. "Hope so." "You might want to check your crowd fund," the man said, chuckling. "Heard the internet's got jokes about you." Ethan kept walking. Maya skipped ahead, humming to herself, seemingly oblivious to the scrutiny surrounding her unlikely friend. Lena glanced sideways at him. "You sure you're up for this? Willowdale is kind, but it's also got a keen eye for outsiders." "I've been humiliated in front of millions of people before," Ethan replied, "but somehow this feels worse because it's personal now." He nodded. "Because it's face to face." They stopped in front of the school gate. Children flooded the playground. Maya turned and gave Ethan a fierce hug around the waist. "Don't let the laughing people make you sad." "I'll try," he said, his throat tighter than he expected. Lena gave a half smile. "Come by for chili tonight if you're still brave." "I'll bring the cornbread," Ethan said as she disappeared into the school building. Ethan turned and headed back towards his truck. He didn't start it right away. He just sat there watching the town awaken. In the distance, he saw two younger men pointing at him from the auto repair shop lot. One of them mimed swiping a card and laughed. Ethan's hands clenched on the steering wheel. He could leave, just get back on the highway, disappear again. There were hundreds of small towns like this, and none of them would care what happened in Willowdale. But something about Maya's voice, her quiet courage, made him stay. Instead of driving off, he headed to the local hardware store. He needed some supplies, literal ones, and perhaps something else. Inside, the cashier looked up with wide eyes. "Didn't expect you here," he said. "Need cash, right?" Ethan met his gaze. "I need to shovel 2 bags of compost and some primer paint. I'm fixing the play area behind the community center." The man raised an eyebrow. "Out of the goodness of your heart." "No," Ethan replied, "because a little girl gave me $10 and reminded me what being truly human looks like." The man didn't speak again as he rang him up. By late afternoon, Ethan was knee-deep in overgrown weeds behind the long-forgotten community center. Sweat dripped from his brow. His shirt clung to him like a second skin of regret. But with every patch of stubborn grass pulled, every loose plank tightened, he felt something shift, something steady and quiet within him. The laughter still echoed in the corners of his mind. But now Maya's voice layered over it. "You didn't trip. You just had a money hiccup." Perhaps dignity wasn't about how others perceived him. Perhaps it was about what he chose to do next, when they stopped looking. The knock at the door came just after sunset. Lena, still in her scrubs, was elbow-deep in soapy water, cleaning dishes from the evening's chilly dinner. Maya was sprawled on the living room rug, coloring with 3 broken crayons and a sheet of printer paper. "Can you get that, sweetie?" Lena called out, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Maya opened the door and grinned. "Ethan." He stood on the threshold, holding a large brown paper bag that sagged slightly at the bottom. "I brought dessert," he said, lifting the bag. "Apple crisp and something that claimed to be banana pudding, though I wouldn't stake my reputation on it." Lena appeared from the kitchen, visibly tired, but with a soft smile. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Ethan replied. "Besides, I owed you both a meal not heated in a microwave." They sat down together at the table, the plates still warm from dinner. Ethan scooped out generous helpings while Maya bounced in her seat. "Mama, tell him about the lady with the yarn hair," she blurted. Lena rolled her eyes with a chuckle. "A patient at the clinic today. She knitted colorful yarn into her rollers to keep her scalp warm. Said it connected her to her grandma's weaving circle." Ethan laughed. "I might have to try that next time I'm in need of creative inspiration." Maya giggled, mouth full of crisp. "You don't have enough hair." As they ate, the mood felt unusually light familiar. Ethan couldn't remember the last time a room felt this safe, without security at the door or assistants checking their watches. Later, as Maya got ready for bed, Lena stepped out onto the small balcony, with Ethan both holding paper cups of lukewarm herbal tea. "You know, I still don't really know who you are," she said, gazing out at the quiet street below. "I told you, Ethan," she smirked. "You know what I mean." He hesitated. "I used to think my name was everything. That if people said it enough times, I mattered more." Lena glanced at him. "And now?" "Now I'm wondering if maybe the only thing that matters is what you do when no one's saying your name at all." A silence settled between them. Not awkward, but full. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I left this on your kitchen counter," he said. "It's not much. Just a little something for Maya's school supplies, her art classes, whatever she needs." Lena didn't take it right away. "I don't want your guilt money, Ethan." "It's not guilt," he said softly. "It's gratitude." She studied him for a long moment before finally accepting it. "You don't need to fix anything. You just need to be honest." He nodded. Inside, Maya was humming to herself as she placed her crayons into a worn shoebox. "Mama, can I give Ethan something?" Lena peered in. "What do you want to give him, sweetie?" Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a tiny object wrapped in tissue. She held it out to Ethan. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small hand-painted stone. It was deep blue with little silver swirls and crooked letters that spelled, "Be a light." "I made it in art class," Maya said shyly. "You can keep it in your pocket so you remember to shine, even when you're feeling dim." Ethan swallowed hard. "I'll carry it everywhere." That night, after they said goodbye, Ethan walked back to his truck parked down the block. He sat in the driver's seat and unwrapped the stone again, holding it in his palm. Something about it made his chest ache. He thought of all the years he'd spent acquiring things, properties, stock portfolios, accolades, and how none of them had ever made him feel this profound sense of connection. Back at the motel, he placed the stone on the nightstand. It looked strangely sacred there, resting beside his luxury watch and key fob. Early the next morning, he drove to the Willowdale Community Center again. He brought lumber this time and paint in bright colors, sky blue, sunshine yellow, and the kind of vibrant green that reminded him of childhood forests. By noon, he had patched up the swing set, sanded down the broken seesaw, and scrubbed years of grime from the climbing frame. He worked with his shirt soaked through a baseball cap low on his brow, humming tunes he didn't remember knowing. People walked by, some with recognition, others with wary glances. A few muttered, "Isn't that the video guy?" But no one stopped to talk. And then a boy around 10 came near the fence. "Are you fixing this place?" "I am," Ethan replied. The boy nodded. "That's cool. My sister skinned her knee pretty bad on that slide last year. Then I better reinforce the bolts." The boy smiled. "My name's Leo." "Nice to meet you, Leo." As the boy walked away, Ethan realized he hadn't once mentioned his own name. Later that afternoon, he taped a note to the door of the community center. "If you've got tools or time, share it. If you've got nothing but heart, bring that too." No signature. He watched the paper flutter in the breeze, and for once felt completely at ease being anonymous. Back at Lena's that evening, Maya ran to meet him before he reached the stairs. "You smell like outside," she said, nose wrinkled in mock horror. "That's because I rebuilt half a playground," he said. "Come see tomorrow." "Really? Only if your mama lets you skip homework." Lena appeared at the doorway, arms crossed. "Not a chance." Ethan smiled. "Worth a shot." As the sun dipped low and cast gold across the brick buildings, he sat on the stoop beside Maya. The tiny blue stone tucked safely in his pocket. He didn't say much, but he didn't need to. Sometimes being seen isn't about flashing lights or headlines. Sometimes it's a crayon-colored stone and a dinner table with mismatched chairs. The bell above the door of the book nook chimed softly as Ethan stepped inside. The scent of roasted coffee beans and old paper drifted through the air like a comforting memory. It was the kind of place that had aged gracefully with its town mismatched armchairs, a long oak counter handwritten signs for artisanal pastries, and a wall of community notices tacked over a faded textile quilt. A ceiling fan rotated lazily above, more for character than cooling. He ordered a plain black coffee, politely declined the pastry offer, and chose a corner seat with a view of the street. He liked sitting by windows now, liked watching people pass without knowing who he was or what he'd done. It grounded him, made the world feel a little quieter. But peace has a way of running short when your face has been seen by 10 million strangers. "Excuse me," a voice said. "Are you Ethan Thorne?" Ethan looked up slowly. The woman standing before him wore a dark green blazer, a notebook tucked under her arm. Her eyes were sharp, not unkind, but trained like someone who made a living observing what others missed. He gave her a measured look. "Depends on who's asking." "Sarah Chen. I'm an independent journalist, mostly human interest stories. I'm working on a piece about you." "There's nothing to write," Ethan replied, taking a slow sip from his cup. "Oh, I think there is," Sarah said, pulling out the chair across from him without waiting for an invitation. The venture capitalist who vanished then reappears in a Georgia town where he gets publicly shamed at checkout and then starts fixing playgrounds with his own hands. That's not just news. That's a compelling narrative. I didn't authorize a narrative. "You can't really control stories once they leave your hands," she said. "You of all people should know that." Ethan studied her, then glanced toward the counter. "Mr. Henderson, the elderly owner, was pretending to wipe the same mug he'd been polishing for 10 minutes, clearly eavesdropping. "I'm not interested in publicity," Ethan said flatly, "and I don't need a redemption arc written by someone who doesn't know me." Sarah leaned forward. "I'm not trying to save your image. I'm trying to understand your truth. Why now? Why disappear for 3 years, then come back without the empire, without the designer suits, without the liquid assets, at least not where it visibly counts?" Ethan set down his cup, his voice calm but with an underlying edge. "I came here to find something I lost, that's all. And I didn't ask anyone to film me, or mock me, or write about me." "True," she said, "but when you walked into that grocery store in bespoke boots and an expired debit card, you walked into a mirror. People saw themselves broken, trying to look fine, and they laughed because it was easier than crying." That stung. He didn't show it. "I met a little girl named Maya," Sarah continued. She told her teacher you're her friend, that you're helping fix her park. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. You spoke to her. I'm thorough, she said, then softened. She said you carry a blue rock in your pocket, says it helps you remember to be good. He didn't respond. Sarah sat back, her tone less aggressive. Now let me tell the story your way. No angles, no sensational headlines, just the truth. Ethan stared down at his coffee. The silence stretched long enough that Sarah stood gently pushing a business card across the table. If you change your mind, call me. I'm here all week. She left without another word. Ethan stared at the card. Her handwriting on the back read, "The ones who fall quietly are the ones whose voices we need to hear most." Outside, the sky had dimmed. He left a few bills on the table, nodded goodbye to Mr. Henderson, and stepped out into the street. He didn't go home. Instead, he drove to the edge of town to the old Quaker cemetery on the hill. He'd passed it before, but never stopped. Tonight he did. The gravel crunched beneath his boots as he walked rows of headstones reading names he didn't know. There was a small plot of children's graves, carved angels and teddy bears in marble. He paused, then sat on a bench beneath an old oak tree. For the first time in years, Ethan let his mind drift back to the boardrooms, to the press conferences, to the day when the markets turned and his name was dragged through a financial fire. Back to the partner who betrayed him, the investors who turned their backs, the headlines that didn't ask for facts, the silence after the crash, thick total, and then to Maya, to her hand outstretched to the blue stone. A noise behind him broke the stillness. Leo, the boy from the playground, stood near the path holding a flashlight. "My great-grandma's buried here," he said. "She used to sit on that bench, too." Ethan nodded. "It's a good bench. You okay?" Ethan looked at the boy, at the raw honesty in his eyes. "Yeah, just thinking. My great-grandma used to say thinking too much makes you sad if you're not careful." Ethan smiled. "She sounds wise." She was. She made blueberry muffins that tasted like sunshine. They sat quietly for a few moments. Then Leo asked, "Why are people mean online?" "Because it's easier to throw stones when no one knows your real name," Ethan answered. The boy nodded solemnly. "But you're fixing stuff. That's really cool." "Trying to be." "You should talk to the school," Leo added. "Our lunch lady retired last month and now the food's just sad." Ethan chuckled. "I'll see what I can do." They left together, walking slowly back to the road, flashlights cutting across the grass. Ethan's mind was still full, but not heavy. The next morning he called Sarah Chen. Not to give her the whole story, just to invite her to the playground's relaunch. "If you want to understand the truth," he told her, "you'll have to get your hands dirty too." The morning of the playground relaunch began with the scent of freshly baked cinnamon rolls and damp earth. Ethan arrived earlier than anyone else. The sky was still blushing, pale rose, and the morning mist clung low to the grass like a secret not ready to be revealed. He unloaded the last few items from the bed of his truck, a folding table, a stack of juice boxes, 2 coolers packed with fruit and cheese, and a small portable speaker playing some classic Motown. It wasn't much, but he'd learned something in Willowdale. People didn't come for glitz. They came for effort. He ran his hand across the new bench they'd installed by the swing set. Smooth, solid, honest, like something you could sit with your back to and not worry what was behind you. By 8:15, the first families began trickling in. Moms in colorful skirts, dads in baseball caps, kids in bright sneakers. Maya was first to the climbing frame, scaling it like a little monkey, her laughter echoing across the yard. Lena followed behind her slowly, a thermos in hand, her expression tired but warm. Ethan waved. Lena gave him a nod, the kind that said, "You did good." The small crowd grew quickly. Word had spread faster than expected. Not just parents and kids, but older couples, teens from the high school, even the cashier from Willowdale Grocers who gave Ethan an awkward smile before handing him a loaf of banana bread. At 9:00, Sarah Chen arrived, not in heels or city attire, but sneakers, jeans, and a ponytail. She was already scribbling in a notebook as she walked. "You really did it," she said. Ethan handed her a fruit cup. "I said I'd get my hands dirty." She pointed towards the tree line. "You've got someone else watching, too." Ethan followed her gaze. Standing at the edge of the park, just beyond the new fence, was a man in a dark suit strikingly out of place among the small-town attire. He wore sunglasses and had the poised, controlled demeanor of someone used to wielding power. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Who is he?" Sarah asked. "Someone from the past," Ethan muttered. The man didn't approach, just watched. Then after a few minutes, he turned and left without a word. Ethan forced the thought away. He had more important things to focus on. Maya was waving him over, pointing excitedly at a new slide freshly painted in forest green. "Mr. Ethan, come test it. I'm not sure I meet the weight limit," he said. "Come on, it's your slide now." Laughter broke out around them. Even Lena cracked a grin. Ethan relented, climbed the ladder, and slid down with a whoop that surprised even himself. When he landed, the applause, half joking, half genuine, caught him off guard. "Looks like it's safe," someone shouted. By mid-morning, kids were playing tag under the trees. Grandparents were sipping herbal tea, and the new mural painted by local teens with Ethan's supplies shimmered in bold colors on the side of the community building. It read, "Be a Light," with a small blue stone drawn beneath the words. Ethan stared at it for a long time, unsure who had painted it. "You've started something," Sarah said beside him, "whether you meant to or not." "I didn't start it," Ethan replied. "Maya did." Sarah flipped her notebook shut. "You think you're the background in this story?" "No," he said. "I think I'm just now learning how to be in it." Suddenly, a scuffle near the gate pulled their attention. A teenage boy, maybe 16, lanky, agitated, was arguing with another voice's raised fist balled. "Hey!" Ethan called, jogging over. The taller boy, clearly worked up, shouted, "He shoved me first for no reason." "I did not," the other said, eyes glassy. "You tripped me." Ethan stepped between them. "That's enough, both of you." The boys huffed, angry but embarrassed. "What's your name?" he asked the angry one. "Jason." Ethan pointed at the mural. "You see that stone? Maya gave me the real one because I needed help and no one else would. Now I carry it. So I don't forget that being strong isn't about hitting first. It's about knowing when to stop." Jason looked away, ashamed. "You two shake hands," Ethan said, "and then grab a juice box and cool off." Reluctantly, they did. Sarah scribbled something quickly. "What are you writing now?" Ethan asked. "Truth," she said simply. Later that afternoon, the crowd began to thin. The juice was gone, the fruit and cheese devoured, and the kids sticky from popsicles someone's aunt had brought in a cooler. Maya hugged Ethan around the waist again. "Best park ever," she whispered. Lena approached with a tired smile. "You okay?" she asked him. He nodded. "Better than I've been in years." She tilted her head. "You sure that man in the suit didn't spook you?" "I'm sure," he said. "The past doesn't get to own me anymore." That night after the cleanup, Ethan sat alone on the new bench. The mural gleamed in the moonlight. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the stone, and turned it in his fingers. He thought of Jason, of Maya, of the man at the fence, and of himself, once too afraid to be seen unless he was being celebrated. He looked up at the stars. They didn't care who he used to be, only what he chose to be next. The man in the suit returned 3 days later. It was just past noon when Ethan stepped out of the book nook with his usual black coffee, greeted by the same charming bell and scent of ground beans. Willowdale's summer air hung thick with heat, and Ethan planned to head straight to the community center to meet a carpenter volunteering to help repair the old gazebo. He never made it to his truck. "Mr. Thorne." The voice was low-clipped, practiced. The same man from the playground stood beside a polished black sedan parked across the street, arms folded, sunglasses now off. His hair was slicked back suit, crisp tie loosened just enough to feign casual, but the gleam in his eyes said business, not familiarity. Ethan froze. "Victor Sterling." The man smiled faintly. "Glad you remember me." Ethan didn't smile back. "Hard to forget the guy who handed me my final severance papers." Victor extended a business card. Ethan didn't take it. "I'm not here to revisit old history," Victor said. "I'm here with an unparalleled opportunity." "I've had enough of those," Ethan replied, stepping to the side. Victor followed. "You simply disappeared. No press, no explanation. Just walked away from a company you built from the ground up. Left your shares on the table. Everyone thought you'd lost your mind. I gained clarity." "You could have vindicated your reputation," Victor continued. "You still can. People are talking." "I don't need the world's vindication," Ethan said. "I just needed to stop pretending it mattered." "But it does matter." Victor snapped the mask, slipping. "You're trending again, Ethan. The grocery store, the kid, the playground. People are watching. You could leverage this, turn it into something substantial." Ethan turned slowly to face him. "I'm not a product, Victor. Not a brand, not your cash cow." Victor lowered his voice. "You're squandering your potential here. Mending swings, sharing lemonade with school children. You were a visionary leader. You reshaped industries. I also ground people under impossible deadlines and ignored my mother's last voicemail because I was closing a lucrative deal. That landed hard. Victor's jaw tightened. Ethan added, "This town doesn't want another tech mogul. They want someone who shows up when the creek floods, someone who helps out when the power goes out." Victor looked around the sleepy street like it personally offended him. "You think this is your comeback story?" he scoffed. "This place is a dead end." "No," Ethan said calmly. "It's a vibrant new beginning." There was a beat of silence. Then Victor shoved the card into Ethan's pocket anyway and walked away, muttering, "The door's open. You won't like it when it closes." Ethan stood still, the coffee in his hand now lukewarm. He stared across the street toward the mural near the community center. "Be a light." The words glowed in the afternoon sun as if they had been waiting to remind him. Later that evening at Lena's apartment, he sat at the dinner table while Maya showed off a picture. She'd drawn a stick figure of him planting flowers, complete with a speech bubble that said, "Let's grow kindness." "You've turned into a cartoon," Lena teased. "I could have been worse," Ethan said. "She could have drawn me as a grumpy squirrel again." Maya giggled. "Squirrels are funny." As they ate, Ethan glanced towards the window. The world outside looked small, intimate, and safe, and yet his mind buzzed with the weight of Victor's words. Lena noticed. "You're quiet tonight." "Just thinking," Ethan said. She set her fork down. "Are you going to tell me what's really on your mind? Or are we going to play this mystery millionaire game forever?" He sighed. "A man I used to work with showed up today. He wants me to come back, clear my name, reclaim everything I walked away from." Lena didn't react immediately. She wiped her mouth, then asked, "Do you want that?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I thought I left for good reasons, but now it feels like the past is trying to pull me back, and maybe I haven't changed as much as I think." "You have," she said simply. "How do you know?" "Because the Ethan who showed up broke and embarrassed in a grocery store didn't run. He stayed. And the one sitting here eating chili with a single mom and her lively kid, he's not the man in those old headlines." Ethan swallowed. "And if I leave, what if I go back to that life?" Lena shrugged. "Then that's your choice. But know this, Maya sees you as more than a man who lost a smart card. She sees you as someone who showed up when no one else did. That doesn't disappear just because you sign a new contract." Maya chimed in mouthful. "You can't help people plant seeds if you're always flying in fancy jets." Ethan chuckled. "Is that in the Bible?" "It's in my brain," she said proudly. That night after dishes were done and Maya was tucked in, Ethan stood at the window staring out into the dark street. He pulled Victor's business card from his pocket and held it over the flame of a candle Lena had left burning on the counter. The edges curled slowly. Then suddenly, the whole thing caught fire. Ethan dropped it into the sink and watched it burn down to ash. He didn't need another empire. He needed purpose. And he'd found it here in Willowdale, in playgrounds and Blue Rocks, in second chances, not televised, but truly lived. By the end of the week, Willowdale was buzzing again, though not with laughter this time. Something was shifting, an invisible hum beneath the quiet streets and cafe chatter. Ethan felt it before he heard it, the way people paused mid-conversation when he walked by, the way Mr. Henderson's smile faltered slightly when he handed him his coffee. Even Lena seemed more guarded, as though expecting a storm. It started with a headline, not one that screamed across tabloids, but something quieter, more insidious. A tech industry blog, known for rumor more than fact, published a short piece titled "The Financier in Hiding: What's Ethan Thorne Really Up To in Small-Town Georgia?" It was filled with speculation. Anonymous sources' hints that Ethan's playground efforts were a cover for something else, something shady. That maybe he hadn't walked away from the tech world cleanly, that maybe the humble comeback was just a PR stunt in disguise. By Monday, the local paper had picked it up, then a talk radio segment, then a video channel run by a guy in a basement wearing sunglasses indoors. It didn't take long for people to start looking at Ethan differently. The playground mural was defaced Tuesday night. Someone spray-painted over "Be a Light" with a crude dollar sign and the words "fake empathy." When Ethan saw it the next morning, he stood still for a long time, the sun rising behind him. Sarah Chen arrived moments later, breathless. "I heard," she said. "I came as soon as I saw the photo online." Ethan didn't say anything. He just stared at the red paint bleeding down the wall like a wound. "I know it wasn't you," she said gently. "Anyone who's been here the last few weeks knows that." "But not everyone has been here," Ethan replied quietly. And the ones watching online, they believe what entertains them, not what's true. Lena joined them, arms crossed, face hard. Cowards couldn't even say it to your face. People get scared when their illusions are threatened, Sarah said, especially the illusion that powerful men can't change. Maya ran up a moment later, stopping short when she saw the mural. Her face dropped. Who did that? Ethan knelt down beside her. Someone who's confused. Maya frowned. But you're a light. No. He smiled faintly. That doesn't mean everyone sees it that way. Well, I do, she said fiercely. And so do my friends. She turned on her heel and marched off toward the school building head high. That afternoon, Ethan borrowed supplies from the community center, paintbrushes, ladders, and stood in front of the mural, ready to fix what had been broken. But he didn't paint over it himself. Instead, he invited others. Dozens showed up. Teens with art kits, parents with toddlers, retired veterans with weathered hands. Even the boy from the playground, Leo, brought a small tray of watercolors. Together, they repainted the mural. Not just restored it, but expanded it. Around the original words, they added bright flowers, stars, small handprints in every color. They painted a bridge over the blue stone and little stick figures holding hands beneath it. Above it all, they added new text in bold white letters. Truth outshines the noise. Ethan stood back, hands splattered with paint, heart heavier than usual. Sarah approached quietly. You should talk to the town. Say something official. Clear the air. I've spent most of my life saying the right things, Ethan said, but maybe what I do here is louder. She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. I'll write that down. That evening, as dusk settled, Ethan sat on the porch at Lena's apartment, drinking iced tea and watching fireflies spark over the lawn. Lena came out joining him. Town's standing behind you, she said. You know that, right? I know some are, but others are still watching, waiting for me to falter. She sipped her tea. Let them. We all falter eventually, but that's not the same as breaking. He looked at her, something soft in his expression. You believe in me. I believe in what I've seen, Ethan. Not what I've read, not what's whispered. He nodded. That's rare these days. They sat in silence a while, the kind that comes when words are spent and understanding settles in their place. Later that night, Ethan walked to the park alone. The mural gleamed under the moonlight, untouched, now protected by invisible walls of community care. He sat on the bench, pulled the blue stone from his pocket, and held it in his hand. Something was coming. He could feel it. The defacement wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a storm. One he couldn't see clearly yet, but he wasn't the man who ran anymore. He was the one who stayed, who showed up, who helped even when helping meant standing alone in the noise. The sun rose early over Willowdale, painting its old clock tower in sprawling oak-topped hills in dusty gold. Ethan stepped out of his truck and inhaled the crisp mountain air, a reminder that this town was more than a backdrop. It was alive in the quiet hum of daily routines, the creak of front porches, the familiar scent of pine and fresh biscuits wafting throughout. He'd spent the night in restless thought decisions, turning over in his mind like gears in a machine. The defacement of the mural had stung, but more than that, it revealed something deeper: fear, suspicion, resistance to change. He knew Willowdale was small, just over 6,000 residents, a hill community with deep roots in textile lore, community craft heritage, and a strong sense of self-reliance. It didn't grow by leaps. It simmered quietly until one day it spilled over. As he walked toward the community center, he passed familiar faces. Mrs. Peterson tending to her herb garden, Mr. Daniels loading bags of feed into his truck, the Artisans Guild banner flapping softly near City Hall. They nodded politely. Curiosity and concern mingled in their eyes. This was the same town that had nicknamed itself the Weaver's Mark, where outsiders were met cautiously and changed with gentle suspicion. Inside the center, volunteers gathered, the wildflowers on the benches fresh from the farmer's market, local crafts displayed with modest pride. Ethan greeted them, offering coffee, warm smiles, wordless gratitude. The chatter turned soft when people mentioned the mural, the whispers of what had been said online. At 9:00 a.m., Mayor Thompson, sworn in just months before, entered the hall, flanked by town council members and elders. For a brief moment, Ethan feared he'd be told to keep doing his good deeds quietly out of sight. But instead, the mayor raised a hand. This community needs to speak its own truth, he said, voice steady. We stand behind those who build, not tear down. A quiet ripple of applause went through the room. Ethan's heart fluttered, not because of praise, but because this moment wasn't about him. It was about the town defending what it believed in unity kindness, the slow justice of shared action. Sarah Chen slipped in beside him too. She'd listened earlier, pen paused mid-scratch, then let it fall to the notebook. He gave her a faint smile, no words needed. Then the door opened as the high school art teacher entered with a handful of students, their paint-stained fingers and shy smiles proof of hard work. They unfurled a fresh alternative mural design poster full of local scenes, Silver Creek Falls cascading down, forested slopes, old weaving loom patterns along Main Street, children under a rainbow reaching toward the words, "Be a light, truth outshines noise." The youth spoke quietly, but with force, explaining how they wanted to show Willowdale's true face. Not the caricature painted online, but something rooted. The hills, the textile lore, the shift toward a more caring present. Ethan listened, feeling alive. Later out front, he joined the students to finalize plans, paint cans, brushes, safety cones. He passed jars of water, nodded encouragement. At noon, Lena and Maya appeared. Maya's eyes took in the work. Then, without a word, she reached for his hand. "You showed them how," she said. Ethan swallowed. A group of older residents arrived too. Some retirees who'd moved here recently, part of the influx shaping Willowdale's new era. Others who had lived through decades of quiet days. They came forward one by one to offer apologies, small donations, or just a nod of reconciliation. In their faces, Ethan saw something older than forgiveness, recognition. The afternoon rolled on with painting. Leo, his new friend from the playground, helped apply butter yellow streaks around the rainbow. A grandmother watched from beneath her umbrella, shielding her from the sun, her watering can idle at her feet. By 5:00 p.m., the mural stood complete, a new, bright, layered, alive piece. Not perfect, but honest. Ethan stood back, panting, paint-spattered, satisfied. Sarah snapped one last photo. "This is the story," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied, "this is the story." That evening, townfolk gathered at Miller's Green, a place where families picnicked and folk bands played under pines. They brought homemade pies, lemonade, laughter. Ethan stood beside Maya and Lena as the sun dipped low, warming their faces. Mayor Thompson cleared his throat. "Let this be a reminder that in Willowdale, we don't let rumors define us. We let kindness do the talking." The crowd cheered. Ethan thought of the blue stone in his pocket, a quiet symbol of remembrance. He pressed it once more, then let it sit there, a steady beat in his palm. Because in the bones of the town, its stories, its fields, its people, he'd found something worth staying for. And this time he knew why he was home. The next morning, the calm didn't hold. Ethan woke to the hum of his phone vibrating incessantly on the nightstand. The sun hadn't even crested the hills yet. He rolled over groggy and answered without checking the caller ID. "You need to see this." Sarah's voice came through. Urgent now. She sent a link. He clicked it. His heart sank. A video was spreading online. Grainy footage from a security camera taken the night before the original mural was defaced. It showed a man, hood up, spray paint can in hand, but the video was deliberately edited. Just enough frames were cropped and cut to make it look like Ethan. The caption read, "The truth about Willowdale's new hero caught in the act." The post already had thousands of shares, thousands of comments, most from people who had never stepped foot in Willowdale, but some, worryingly, were local names. Ethan recognized people he'd shared coffee with, laughed with, worked beside. He felt the floor shift under him. Within an hour, he was at the book nook. The usual warmth in the room was missing. Mr. Henderson himself looked up from behind the counter, his face pale. "I know it's not true," he said quickly, as if reassuring himself, "but folks are asking questions." Ethan nodded slowly. "I'll fix it." He stepped outside just as Lena pulled up. Maya hopped out of the passenger side, but Ethan could tell something was wrong. Lena didn't smile. Her jaw was tight. "You've seen it," he said. "I have," she replied. "I also know that footage is garbage." Maya took his hand, whispering, "Don't worry. I told the kids at school it's a lie." Ethan forced a smile, though his stomach twisted. "Thanks, kiddo." But things got worse. By noon, a crowd had formed outside the community center. Not a mob, but not friendly either. Local men in worn jeans and work boots. Women with folded arms clutching phones, murmurs of disappointment, doubt. They hadn't come to hear him. They came to watch what he would do. Ethan stepped forward. "I know what's out there," he began. "I've seen the video, and I'm telling you it's not me." Someone in the back scoffed. "Looks like you, walks like you." Another voice. "Why would someone frame you?" Ethan hesitated. Because I left a world that doesn't forgive. Because the people I used to stand beside don't like it when someone walks away and starts building something real. The crowd murmured again. Doubt hung heavy. Then Lena stepped beside him. My daughter and I were with him the night that mural was defaced, she said, voice steady. He brought us food, helped Maya with her science project. He wasn't out painting walls. Sarah stepped forward too. And I checked the security footage metadata. It's been tampered with. Whoever posted it wanted you to believe it because they know Willowdale listens to its own. A long silence followed. Then an older man, Mr. Daniels, spoke. I don't know much about digital tricks, but I know that kid. He nodded at Maya. Wouldn't follow a liar, and I trust her judgment more than any video. A few chuckles broke out. The tension loosened. Maya beamed. That evening, Ethan returned home and collapsed onto the porch. The weight of the day pressed into his bones. The attacks weren't stopping. They were escalating. Whoever wanted him gone wasn't playing games anymore. He pulled out the blue stone, turned it in his fingers. You still with me? He asked quietly. The stone, of course, said nothing, but the door creaked open behind him, and Lena stepped out, carrying 2 cups of herbal tea. Thought you could use something warm, she said. Thanks. She sat beside him, both of them looking out into the darkening street. You think it's going to stop? He asked. No, she said honestly, but I think you're stronger than whatever's coming. He looked at her. I wasn't before. You are now. They sat together in the quiet. Not everything was fixed, but something had shifted, because truth doesn't need a megaphone. It needs time, and Ethan was done running out of that. Dawn's first light filtered through the pines, drawing long shadows across Willowdale's gently rolling hills. Ethan woke to a quiet stirring, a collective breath held between the town and him. The prior day's confrontation had shaken something loose in his chest, but it hadn't broken him. He sipped lukewarm coffee in his truck, parked beside the community center before heading inside. Inside, volunteers were already arranging materials for the week's next project, reopening the rundown craft studio wing, which had sat closed for years. At 9:00 a.m., Mayor Thompson arrived, clipboard in hand, looking more determined than Ethan had ever seen him. That video attack, some people think it's a final blow, the mayor said, voice low. Ethan nodded. Maybe, but blame isn't the opposite of trust. The mayor gave him a look. I'm ready to fight for the truth for this town. Word spread fast in Willowdale. By mid-morning, locals trickled in. Artisans dusting off looms. Task force volunteers making fresh signage. Even the cashier from the grocery store. They brought their tools, their questions, and most importantly, their presence. Ethan found Lena at the sorting table, stacks of textile patterns behind her. She handed him a chipped mug full of paintbrushes. We're trying to build something stronger, she said, one thread of trust at a time. He smiled. That's the best kind. Kids from the middle school arrived next part of the Willowdale Weavers Youth Club, their t-shirts boldly proclaiming their craft. From the edge of the room, Maya waved and gave him a thumbs up. He met her gaze, nodding back. By lunchtime, the craft studio wing looked different already. Windows, repaired shelves, restocked creative nooks arranged with cozy cushions. The mural's colors bled inside, now visible through open doors. Sarah Chen appeared again, camera in hand, but eyes softer. You're making this real, she said. Ethan leaned against a table. I used to think delivering a quarterly report mattered. Turns out words in empty rooms don't change hearts. Sarah placed her notebook on the table. You're breathing life into places people forgot existed. Mid-afternoon, a rallying voice echoed through the open doors. It was Mr. Daniels, who'd worked in construction before retirement, holding a stack of donation cards. We got enough to keep the lights on and hire a part-time studio assistant. A cheer erupted. Others stepped forward. Parents offering weaving lessons. Veterans offering security on evenings, retirees offering weekly story hours with grandchildren. Ethan felt his throat tighten, the weight of everything he'd walked away from melting in this moment of authenticity. Then Mayor Thompson cleared his throat again. We're going to dedicate this wing tomorrow. It will be called the Weaver's Mark Corner in honor of someone who reminded us why this matters. Ethan swallowed, hard heart blazing. He looked out at the faces, hands rough from work, eyes warm with renewed hope. That evening, Ethan stood outside under the towering pines by the community center. The breeze carried the scent of cedar, the promise of a coming rain. He pulled the blue stone from his pocket, warmed by his hand. He pressed it softly. Lena joined him silently. After a moment, she said, "They believe now." Ethan nodded. "They see now." She met his gaze. "That's all any of us ever want." He thought of the numbers, the town's population hovering just over 6,000, overwhelmingly diverse and rich in its craft traditions. He thought of how striking and challenging his presence had been, but now, slowly the fabrics of trust were being rewoven, strengthened by action over assumption. At the edge of the darkening sky, fireflies flickered into life, tiny sparks, nearly invisible, but unmistakable. Ethan pocketed the stone and inhaled deeply. He wasn't rebuilding an empire. He was helping rebuild a community. And this time the change was as quiet and steady as the turning of the seasons. The early afternoon sun filtered through tall pines, casting dappled shadows over the newly revived craft studio wing. Families, artisans, town elders, and volunteers gathered in the courtyard just beyond the entrance. Folding chairs were arranged in neat rows, and a simple wooden podium stood ready, draped with a homemade banner that read, "The Weaver's Mark Corner, dedicated today." Ethan stood near the back, hands tucked into his pockets, watching as the crowd settled. Maya sat beside Lena on the front row, her legs swinging, excitement lighting her face. Ethan's heart swelled seeing her there, the girl whose small act had sparked it all. Mayor Thompson stepped up to the microphone. His voice carried easily in the hush of anticipation. "Thank you all for coming. Today we dedicate this space to something far bigger than bricks and looms. We dedicate it to kindness, to action, to the spirit of collaboration that lives in every one of us. It is called the Weaver's Mark Corner." He turned and looked at Ethan, who offered a small nod of appreciation. The mayor continued, "We had help along the way. Invisible help, quiet help. But none of it would have mattered if the people of Willowdale hadn't shown up, and someone reminded us what that looks like." Ethan stepped forward. He cleared his throat, scanning the faces before him. Parents with toddlers, seniors with canes, teens in school uniforms, strangers who had become friends. He looked at Maya, whose nervous smile steadied him. "Thank you," he began softly. "I came here not expecting a monument. I came here because a little girl handed me $10 when my card failed. That did two things. It fed my hunger and fed a part of my soul I didn't realize was starving." Murmurs of recognition echoed through the crowd. "I have lived a life chasing headlines, applause, profit margins," he said, "but none of that truly changed me. Staying here, fixing playgrounds, reopening craft studios, painting murals has changed me. You all have. This corner isn't about me. It's about the truth that helping matters." He paused, glancing at the inscription on the building. "Be a light. Truth outshines the noise." Maya's stone, all of it woven into the walls. "I want kids to come here," he continued. "Not just to learn a craft, but to remember that community is built from small acts of care, that no one is too powerful to ask for help, and no act of kindness is so small it can't transform a life." Applause broke out soft at first, then growing in warmth. Ethan stepped back down. Maya ran up and threw her arms around him in a fierce hug. "I helped build," she whispered into his shirt. "No," Ethan corrected gently. "You helped me build something real." Lena handed him a tissue and a proud smile. As the crowd dispersed, volunteers guided guests inside to explore the fresh shelves, the cozy nooks filled with donated fabrics, the new sewing machine storyboards posted on cork strips, and a bright corner painted in soft yellow labeled Kids Loom Corner. Sarah Chen found him beside the entrance, notebook empty now, but satisfaction bright in her eyes. "You told it," she said simply. He nodded. "Let's hope people listen." By evening, the courtyard had emptied chairs folded and return banner carefully stored. Ethan remained seated on the same wooden bench under the pines, now shaded and hushed. Maya sat beside him yawning. "She's worn out," Lena whispered as she came out to join them. "We'll head home soon." "Okay," Ethan said, resting his arm lightly across Maya's shoulders. She leaned into him. The three sat in companionable silence, the quiet only broken by the rustle of pine needles and a distant train's horn. Ethan thought of how 3 weeks ago he had felt invisible. Now he felt connected, rooted. Lena looked at him. "You ever regret coming back?" Ethan drew the blue stone out of his pocket and rolled it in his fingertips. "I thought I did once." He looked at her, then at Maya, then at the studio glowing softly behind them. "But not anymore." Lena squeezed his hand. Night settled in. Ethan stood, brushing off his jeans. He tucked the stone back into his pocket. "We'll go home," he said gently. Maya hopped up sleepy, rubbing her eyes. "Good night, Mr. Ethan." "Good night, Maya," he said, catching her. "Sleep well." As they walked away, Ethan glanced once more at the sign. The Weaver's Mark Corner. The lights inside cast a gentle glow onto the courtyard. He exhaled, a weight lifted. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Doubt might return. New challenges might arise. The man in the suit might appear again, but here in the current of this place he had found something worth defending, a truth made of hands, hearts, and craft studios. And in that he had found himself. When the choir of crickets rose in the warm night air, he realized maybe this was home, an imperfect, healing human home. Morning light filtered gently through the tall pines beyond the Weaver's Mark Corner, greeting Willowdale with a golden hush. Ethan stepped out into the small cobbled square that served as the heart of downtown historic brick buildings encircling the old Willowdale Heritage Hall, a structure standing since 1872, restored yet dignified in its age. It was a place rooted in legacy, carrying whispers of every soul who'd ever walked along the Silver Creek paths. From textile innovators to community organizers, he walked past the Willowdale Craft Museum, its looms silent early in the day, waiting for the next artisan to ignite it in creation. And beyond that dreamy storefronts, some long-shuttered others, newly painted, stood as silent promise. "Preserving our history and providing for the future," read the city motto, printed once on a brochure Ethan recalled spotting. He paused to touch the cool bricks of the old silk mill, built in 1890. Its thick walls speaking of industry and community, woven truths. In this place, every structure carried a story of Cherokee lands, of pioneers chasing new livelihoods in 1840, of skilled hands and intricate patterns that evolved into Willowdale's craft reputation. Ethan inhaled deeper. He felt the pulse of generations in this square, and with that came clarity. What he had built at the studio wasn't a detour. It was part of the same current that had always run through Willowdale. Legacy didn't silence change. It had to embrace it. He made his way inside the Weaver's Mark Corner. The bright yellow Kids Loom corner welcomed him with open arms from the entrance. The rows of fabric stood like patient friends. In the corner, a display honored local history, a photograph of pioneering weavers and early textile designs beside vintage images of town gatherings, and a plaque recounting the town's craft and community roots. Sarah stood there, camera off, notebook closed, but her expression was that of someone realizing something profound. "Hey, you're building more than community," she said quietly. "You're blending past and present. This place feels like home." Ethan nodded. "We're not erasing history. We're building on it." Later, as the town's weekly farmers market opened on the nearby street, Ethan and Lena wandered among stands selling fresh bread, local honey, homemade preserves, and intricate crafts, entrepreneurship, and tradition side by side, like the hands of mothers teaching children to sew, beside those of retirees offering stories from old times. At the stand of Oak Hill Farm, Ethan chatted with a farmer about the coming harvest. She offered him a free sample of berry jam. And as he spread it on bread, he recognized that this land, this Appalachian inheritance, thrived in quiet acts of renewal and resilience. Meanwhile, Maya chased fireflies near the fountain, collecting fallen petals to press between pieces of wax paper, muttering poetry only a child could compose. Back on the Heritage Hall steps, the mayor arrived with a handful of flyers and maps. Today was the launch of a series of heritage walks to celebrate places like the old silk mill, the community weaving house on Main Street, Silver Creek Falls, and trails that once echoed with Cherokee voices. "Would you speak at the kickoff event?" he asked Ethan, tone hopeful. Ethan considered the brick facade, the silent witnesses of ancestral dreams of skilled hands working by day and building community by night. "I'd be honored," he said. They climbed the Heritage Hall steps together, town folks scattering out to attend. At the podium, Ethan glanced at the crowd, teachers, mothers, shopkeepers, children clutching homemade signs that read, "Truth and Roots," and "Being a Light." He spoke from the heart. History is not a monument, it's living. It's what we do when we honor what came before and dare to make something new. Willowdale's legacy runs deep. From first settlers to textile mills to craft studios and community halls, now we're adding pages to that story, not with speed or fame, but with empathy, renewal, and shared belief. They cheered. Maya jumped up beside Lena, eyes bright. The heritage walks began. small groups trailing behind Ethan, Sarah, and the mayor as they pointed out the Heritage Hall cornerstone laid in 1872. The silk mill's brick walls that once housed more than machinery, they held hope of livelihood. The community weaving house's old loom as a testament to perseverance and artistry. The Appalachian trails as a connection to native roots and future wanderers. Ethan led, gently sharing stories he'd learned, listening as elders filled in details and children questioned with wonder. Each footprint on the walk was an affirmation. Every person like him could root themselves here authentically and unafraid. At the day's close, under gathering dusk, fireworks of gratitude glowed in timid smiles and return nods. Ethan returned to the bench in front of the Weaver's Mark corner, Maya's stone warm in his pocket. Lena and Maya joined him, and together they watched the Heritage Hall clock tower ring old and faithful, marking time, reminding the town that history is less about what we hold in memory and more about what we build with our hands, hearts, and shared humanity. An early spring breeze brushed through Willowdale, carrying the scent of pine sap and fresh rain across the Heritage Hall square. Ethan stood in the quiet morning light, gazing at the historic Willowdale Heritage Hall, its red brick facade standing steady since the mid-19th century, a silent witness to generations of community life. He thought of everything that had happened since the day Maya handed him that crumpled $10 bill. Redemption, defamation, mutual rebuilding, and now a deeper turning integrating who he had been with, where he chose to stand, now standing on shared heritage and mutual trust. Lena and Maya joined him. Ethan slipped the little blue stone into his pocket like a promise. Lena looked toward the community weaving house, visible from the square, built in 1935, crafted in the arts and crafts style, complete with a secret attic, once used for storing illegal moonshine during Prohibition. "This house," she said quietly, "it reminds us that Willowdale has always been about survival reinvention, people adapting, hiding when they had to, but always building families, communities, futures." Ethan nodded. Bootleggers laid hidden tunnels. Now we're building open spaces like the Weaver's Mark corner spaces for learning and connection instead of secrecy. Maya tugged his hand. "Can I tell the tour group about that secret attic?" He gave a wry smile. "That might be too wild even for this town." Laughter rang softly between them. Later that day, Ethan and Sarah stood in front of a tentative group of visitors gathered for a Heritage and Hope walking tour. Their purpose to connect Willowdale's complicated history, Prohibition runners' early craft collectives, overlooked communities, with the new chapter of kindness now unfolding. With steady calm, Ethan spoke. "This Heritage Hall has watched years pass, conflicts won and lost, designs created and perfected. The community weaving house built as a home, once sheltered a secret. Still, these walls teach us that history isn't always neat or righteous. It's human." Sarah added, "And today it becomes more an invitation to learn from the past and build something generous and transparent." The group wandered past the Willowdale Craft Museum, where echoes of clattering looms and cheerful banter still roamed heritage born from early textile workers turned renowned artisans. At each stop, Ethan invited commentary. An older woman remembered her grandmother's quilting circles. A young teacher spoke of how local pride still coursed through town. Even a guest from out of state nodded, feeling the weight of stories carried in these streets. By afternoon, daylight waned, and they returned to the Weaver's Mark corner. Inside, children clustered around reading nooks, while parents quietly paged through town archives and restored photographs. The fresh mural, "Be a Light," gazed over everything bright and alive. White-collar and blue-collar families mingled, as did multi-generational visitors. Farmers, teachers, retirees, everyone bound by shared narrative fit into a growing mosaic that now included Ethan's journey. Mayor Thompson approached Ethan. "This tour, it changed me today. People feel more anchored." Ethan placed a hand on the mayor's shoulder. "Sometimes healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about acknowledging it and choosing to build something that honors both who we were and who we want to become." That evening, under lanterns strung across the courtyard, the town held a small celebration. Biscuits with local jam lemonade acoustic guitar from a local singer. It was humble, warm, and perfectly unscripted. Maya danced barefoot on the grass. Lena watched him, pride lighting her features. Ethan savored a biscuit and quietly held the blue stone, knowing that his gratitude for roots, community, and second chances would guide him forward. He looked at the swirl of faces around him, the faces of those who had judged those who doubted, and those who chose to stay to rebuild to trust again. And in those faces, he found his real home. Willowdale woke beneath a sky brushed pale by early spring. Dew clung to the blades of grass in front of the Weaver's Mark corner, turning the courtyard into its own small sea of light. Ethan stood barefoot on the stone threshold, the blue stone in his pocket, a reminder that some things remain steady even when the future feels uncertain. Today was not a dedication or community celebration. Today the craft studio wing was closed, the playground empty. It was a Sunday, a day for quiet reflection, or so Ethan had hoped. Instead, Lena found him sitting on the front steps, lost in thought. "You look like you're carrying a storm," she said, handing him 2 paper cups of hot coffee. He took one, warming his hands. "The man in the suit, he was here yesterday." "You mean Victor Sterling?" Ethan nodded. "He dropped by. Rosie's asked about me. I didn't let him see me, but I know he's still out there offering me a lifeline to a world I'm not sure I want to return to." Lena sat beside him. "You've changed." "I have." He looked out toward the pines. "But what if that world hasn't changed? What if they only want me when I'm useful to them? And when I'm not? Well, they discard the memory of me." She studied him quietly, then said, "Then let them call. Doesn't mean you answer." He took a slow breath. "That's what Maya said the other day. She's got good sense." They sat in silence. Eventually, Maya bounded across the courtyard, a curious look in her eyes. "What are you two talking about?" "It's just big person stuff," Ethan said. He smiled gently. "Want to help me sweep the porch?" Maya nodded eagerly, grabbing a whisk broom from a stack. As she swept, a rhythm emerged, soft brush against stone warm coffee scent, the world pausing around them. Later, Sarah appeared with her notebook, only this time unprompted. "I've got the story where you don't have to decide today," she said, voice soft. "It's okay if you never go back." He met her gaze, grateful. "Thank you." Sarah nodded, then left. No cameras, no flash, just trust. By afternoon, the town's rhythm had returned. The cafe filled with faithful locals. A neighbor dropped by with fresh eggs. Children chased fireflies in the grass. The mural "Truth Outshines the Noise" glowed in accidental afternoon gold. Ethan walked to the mural, fingers tracing the letters. He thought of Victor's card still burning in the sink at Lena's. That final act, letting it collapse into ashes, had been freeing. Now the choice felt clearer. That evening, under a sky of twilight purple dusk, Ethan and Lena stood under the pines. He held the stone now worn smooth. "I'm not going back," he said softly. Lena looked at him steadily. "I know." He exhaled, a weight lifting. Behind them, Maya called to chase more fireflies. The past, the tech empire, the betrayals, the headlines was not forgotten. But Eden had been found in simple things, a craft studio, a playground, a stone. And in choosing to stay, as Ethan slipped the stone into Maya's small hand and joined her laughter under dangling pines, he knew Willowdale had offered him something far greater than fame. It had offered him a place to belong. Sunlight filtered through the high pines at dawn, illuminating the courtyard of the Weaver's Mark corner with a forest green glow. Ethan stepped outside, greeted by the sound of gentle humming, a steady rhythm of life. The craft studio wing was back open, its entrance framed with wildflowers someone had planted overnight, an unexpected gift that carried both gratitude and hope. Lena approached, carrying a tray of coffee and pastries freshly baked for volunteer crafters who'd come to host early morning workshop sessions. "They say kids are learning to be innovative as they craft," she said softly, placing the tray. "Maybe the spirit of community spreads quietly," Ethan said, taking a pastry. "Like this courtyard, unnoticed until something blooms." Maya appeared from between shelves holding a stack of colorful fabric squares. "Mr. Ethan, may I lead the pattern making for the toddlers today?" she asked, proud and confident. Ethan smiled down at her. There's no better teacher than someone showing through imagination. Moments later, he sat in the weaving nook, watching Maya's voice brighten the room as children gathered around her ears, alert smiles, wide hearts leaning in. He realized then that legacy isn't built with grand speeches or vast empires. It's woven quietly in moments like these. Later, volunteers arrived with tools to extend the little garden beds by the entrance. Ethan joined them, digging deep into the soil, planting marigolds and zinnias. Lena handed him a watering can, and together they tended to life growing right beneath their fingertips. Sarah Chen wandered over camera, off notebook in her hand. She didn't ask questions today. She simply offered a knowing nod. No words, just recognition. Some stories needed living, not telling. By afternoon, the town's weekly farmers market had reopened in full swing near the Heritage Hall Square. Ethan walked among tents displaying fresh produce, handmade quilts, vintage photographs of Willowdale's craft past, and jars of berry preserves scented with sunshine. People greeted him, some with old questions, some simply with smiles of appreciation. No headline drama today, just rooted connection. At the center of the market, a small table displayed handmade signs reading "Craft Workshops," offering things like woodworking lessons, textile art journals, and even kindness circles for teens. Initiatives born from community discussion and funded through contributions. Ethan paused beside the table, feeling the weight of how small ideas become movements. Just then, Leo, the boy from the playground, ran up, holding a sketch of the restored mural. He'd added new symbols, an open book, a rising sun, and a blue stone tucked into the corner. "You drew this?" Ethan asked, kneeling beside him. "Yeah, it's our story, right?" Leo said quietly. Ethan pressed his hand to the boy's shoulder. "The best story, and you helped write it." That evening, under the gentle glow of stringed lanterns at the craft studio courtyard town, members gathered for a harvest of hearts, a modest shared dinner of casserole cornbread, apple crisp, and sweet tea. Conversation flowed easily, layered with laughter and gratitude. Mayor Thompson raised his glass of iced tea. "Here's to Willowdale and to those who yearned for something better than oblivion or empire. We found it right here in Crafts Gardens playgrounds, and trust." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Ethan looked around at Lena, at Maya, at neighbors by his side. When applause ended, Maya climbed onto a chair and declared, "Can we be creative again tomorrow?" Ethan laughed, moved by her boundless energy. "Absolutely." Later, as the night deepened and guests drifted home, Ethan lingered by the mural's light. He pressed the blue stone in his pocket, feeling its smoothness, shared warmth held promise. He thought of the suit-wearing man far away. The choice not to answer the door had opened him to something infinitesimally immense, a quiet legacy built so gently it almost didn't announce itself, yet forged with more meaning than any empire. He looked up at the pines, silent sentinels of change and constancy. Here at last was a story worth telling, not because it clamored for attention, but because it whispered, and people listened. The legacy of a community builder isn't measured in wealth or fame. It's found in roots set down, hands held out, and the quiet turning of hearts. Willowdale had embraced him, not as a provider, but as a partner, a neighbor, a friend. And the silence between those titles was in its way the loudest truth. Spring had settled into Willowdale with quiet certainty. The air smelled of flowering dogwood and dew-softened pine needles. The Weaver's Mark corner bathed in gentle morning light, its open doors welcoming guests once more. School was winding down, and the world outside still seemed as though it had learned something enduring about kindness. Ethan stepped out onto the porch, cup of sweet tea in hand, watching the subtle hum of everyday life. The clusters of marigolds and zinnias around the entrance nodded in the breeze, small symbols of a flourishing community. Not long after, Lena emerged with Maya. The girl carried a paper plate of berry turnovers left over from Saturday's mother-daughter art workshop at the downtown pavilion, where laughter had danced over colorful paints and chatter about the upcoming Willowdale Fiber Festival. The town's calendar was filling again: Main Street concert nights, food truck Fridays, the Silver Creek Regional Farmers Market every Saturday. Ethan offered the plate to Lena, who smiled and accepted. "Morning," she said softly. "Looks like today's planning committee is meeting at the hall." He glanced at Maya. "And what about you?" "May I help?" she asked, bright-eyed. He chuckled. "Already starting." They walked together toward the historic town hall, where volunteers were gathered to plan a new seasonal tradition, a kindness trail connecting the studio, the community center, and local parks, highlighting both natural beauty, like the trailheads of Pine Ridge Park, and community landmarks, like the Willowdale Craft Museum and the Heritage Hall. Inside, Sarah Chen snapped photos quietly, notebook tucked away, her presence now as integrated into the town's rhythms as the church bells or the Saturday market stall. Mayor Thompson addressed the group. "We've restored places," he said. "Now we build connections to each other and to the history and beauty of this county. Silver Creek Trail's Main Street people should hike, bike, learn, not just pass through. Ethan stood and spoke. Not every mark we leave is visible, but every marked trail reminds us that direction means something. We want this to show Willowdale is rooted. Here's where we come together step by step. Later, the group walked outside toward the Heritage Hall Square. Decorative flower beds dotted the park, a small sculpture garden, and courts for pickleball where teenagers practiced shots amid friendly shouts. Ethan noticed how people passed each other greeting, nodding, sometimes stopping to share ambitions, worries, small triumphs. During the Silver Creek Regional Farmers Market, Ethan helped Maya set up a lemonade stand. They sold lemonades under the shade of pines, and neighbors dropped by, some offering tips, some just kind words. Beneath the cheerful clink of cups, Ethan felt something ripen trust, grounded in shared minutes. That evening, Ethan and Lena strolled through the town square, lit by lanterns. They passed the Willowdale Craft Museum, its workshops humming softly as visitors tried their hand at virtual weaving. The Heritage Hall shone silently witness to decades of small-town life, and now to something renewed. He reached down and pulled the blue stone from his pocket, warm with touch. Lena smiled gently. Seasons change. Ethan nodded. They teach us that growth is quiet, and sometimes it waits until it can't be stopped. At home, they tucked Maya in. She drifted to sleep, hugging her embroidered Be a Light pillow. Ethan closed the door behind her and stepped onto the porch to breathe deep. The night settled around the craft studio wing windows, dark but bright, in memory of daytime laughter. A soft wind whispered through the pines. He pressed his hand to the stone. No hurry to be someone else again. Here, between community events, shared laughter, and trails both physical and personal, he had learned the truest kind of legacy, forged not in gilded halls, but in quiet seasons of service. And that legacy would grow one gentle trail at a time. The first light of summer dawned softly over Willowdale, gilding the pines and casting long shadows across the courtyard of the Weaver's Mark Corner. A few early risers, caretakers, gardeners, artisans sat on the porch in quiet companionship. Ethan joined them, coffee in hand, welcomed by familiar nods, and the gentle creak of rocking chairs that felt like permission to belong. Today was no ordinary day. It was the 10th anniversary of a moment no one in town will forget: a crumpled $10 bill, a girl's outstretched hand, and the beginning of something unexpectedly lasting. Maya stirred awake nearby in the apartment above the craft studio wing, the old building humming with potential and memory. Ethan glanced down at the blue stone in his palm, warmed by his grip. It felt both simple and sacred. By mid-morning, families, neighbors, and longtime residents had gathered outside the studio. A modest banner read, 10 years of weaving kindness, a celebration of community legacy and truth. The boardwalk outside was lined with handmade signs, Be a Light, truth outshines noise, kindness grows here, woven into the town's visual soul. Lena stood beside Ethan, radiant and grounded. Maya arrived, clutching a drawing she'd made of that first moment, their hands connected by that $10 bill, now historic. It was framed and set on an easel near the porch. Mayor Thompson stepped up, ushering the crowd to hush. 10 years ago today, he said, voice steady, Ethan Thorne came into our town anonymously, and a girl taught him something more valuable than money. Today we celebrate what has grown from that moment, not just a story, but a home. People listened, smiles shining some misting behind glasses. Ethan stood, his heart thrummed with memory and gratitude. I came here hoping to disappear, he began. But this town saw me. A young girl showed me a path back to myself. He looked at Maya. She stood, tall eyes bright. He folded in his heart the echoes of that day. In the years since, the Craft Studio Wing has become a center of learning and inclusion workshop programs, heritage archives, evening communal craft sessions with local elders, and summer art clubs run by teens who grew up here. The playground stands vibrant with murals telling stories of the land, the people, the journeys that shape them. The Kindness Trail now loops through woods past historic sites and community art pieces painted by school children, uniting past and present in motion. Ethan said, I used to measure worth by numbers and headlines. Here I've learned that value lives in roots, not reach. I may have walked in under a headline, but I stayed for roots, friendship's purpose. The applause rose tender, filled with recognition. During the informal reception after the speech, Ethan circulated among neighbors, some he knew from the start, others he'd met along the way. He talked quietly with Mrs. Peterson about herb gardening shared a laugh at the vintage photograph exhibit with the retired artisans and hugged the high school art teacher who'd started the kids' mural club. Sarah Chen arrived again carrying her camera not for a story now, but to capture memory. She nodded at him quietly. The final photo she would ever take of his journey looked more like belonging than breaking. At sunset, people drifted away under a twilight sky lit with fireflies. Ethan lingered, strolling the courtyard as stars began to emerge. The stone in his pocket pulsed with meaning, no longer just a reminder, but a testament. Under the soft glow of lantern light, Maya appeared. She climbed onto the porch, pulling her father by the hand. "We changed the drawing," she whispered. In her hands, the framed picture now included the mural in the background, the studio, even the silhouette of a man kneeling beside a girl, a visual time travel across 10 years. He knelt beside her, brushing a finger over her hair. "You changed me," he whispered back. Lena joined quietly, and the three of them sat together holding that frame and watching the lanterns swing above. Ethan thought about the invitation he once was offered to go back into a world of recognition and influence, how he declined without a second thought. He thought about what had truly mattered, not reclaiming a lost place in headlines, but building a steady place in hearts. The crickets sang, the pines whispered, the studio glowed behind them, alive with memory and promise. In the end, he realized home is not just a place. It's a story woven quietly between moments of trust, acts of kindness, and the courage to stay when you know you belong. And Willowdale had given him that story in abundance. He pressed Maya's hand gently, looking at the horizon where dawn would rise again. After 10 years, hope wasn't new. It was homegrown. The story teaches us that true legacy isn't built through fame or wealth, but through kindness, connection, and quiet acts of service. It reminds us that even the smallest gestures, like a child offering help, can ripple into profound change. When we choose community over ego and truth over image, we create something lasting. In a world that often values noise, this story champions the quiet strength of belonging, humility, and doing good without needing recognition.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.